Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome to the Clarity Hotline. I got Instagram, YouTube, and we're ready to go. Welcome, welcome, Clutter Free family. Let's get into it. We're answering your life's burning questions. Burning life questions? I always mess that up. I think it's life's burning questions. And I've been answering questions like this, giving people clarity or helping people get clarity for over 10 years. So, and we can do it on this call. So stay with me, ask your questions. And I'll let you know what questions were pre-submitted because I do have some pre-submitted questions, but I will let you know I like to take the live calls. So that is to encourage you to ask questions on these live calls. But there were some pre-submitted and they are kind of heavier topics. One is, let's see, we can probably get through, I don't know, maybe two. How do I manage my anxiety? I have to leave the room. It gets so bad. The next one is, there is some context on these. And then how do I know if I'm living my purpose? And so that one is just a kind of a blanket question, no context there, and that's fine. The more context you give, and if you write your name, easier for me to know who's talking, in case your handle is some fun, fancy way of saying something about you, and I don't know how to pronounce it. Okay, so say your name, that'll help. And let's get into it. Let's start with a breathing exercise. If you can close your eyes, all the better. If you can't, that's fine. Big breath in, big breath out. Big breath in. Think of this inhale as like just cleansing, and then exhale to release any tension, any upset feelings, so that you can allow in what's going to get downloaded for you today. I do have a little story to tell you about this shirt, and it kind of goes hand in hand with my the fact that my birthday was yesterday. So it was my birthday yesterday, and I'm recognizing as I'm getting older, I'm like, oh man, I am finding all the ways to be less and less complicated in my life. Simplify. I feel like I've always been on a journey of simplifying my life and having less and less complications. And I put this shirt on. It's a little bit wrinkly. I don't know if you can tell, but it's a little bit wrinkly. And I was like, oh, I should change my shirt. And I don't do much to prep for these live calls. And in a way, it's on purpose. I just want them to be easy. I want to be able to just breathe, center, and ground myself, and then jump on, right? And if I add too many steps, it's just going to start to get too much overhead. It's going to get overloaded with my process. And so I was like, oh, I could change a shirt. But that's a complication I'm adding to the mix that I don't need to add. And why it's a complication is because I'm choosing to do something out of fear, right? Out of insecurity. So, oh, I don't want people to see this wrinkly shirt. And so I'd rather not complicate my life by doing something based on fear. And as much as I can recognize where I'm acting in a fearful way, I'm all for it. I'm all about trying to reduce that bottleneck, declutter that form of fear, that manifestation of fear and insecurity in my life. And so I kept the shirt on, and all really to let you know, like, hey, I intentionally kept this on. So in a way, I'm serving some purpose, but the purpose feels a lot better than complicating my life. And hopefully it helps you think about ways that you can uncomplicate your life. That things that you are doing maybe out of fear that really just add bulk to your day, and maybe tension, frustration, dis-ease. So all that to say, I want to invite us as we continue to just close out this breathing session before we get into the questions. Um, we 2 weeks ago we did a perfect day, um, like guided breathing exercise. I don't call it meditation because I really do like the option of closing our eyes in proper meditation. Moving meditation is different, obviously, right? Mindful meditation, just being mindful in the moment, can be meditative. But it was just a guided session. And I want to do another one that's like that. It's not going to necessarily require you close your eyes, but if you can, all the better. So, like, if you can, definitely close your eyes on this one. Okay. So, big inhale. We're breathing in to cleanse and breathing out to release. Inhale and exhale. Really long exhale. And if you can close your eyes, go ahead and do so now. And kind of a spin on this perfect day. I want to put a twist on that. So thinking about your perfect day, and you've got the start of the rest of the day today after this call to do this and carry this forward. Even right now, I want you to do it with me right now. You can use this time that you chose and we will make it productive for you. So close your eyes, take a big inhale, and ask yourself this question. What, if it happened today, would make this day worth it? What, if it happened today, would make this day worth it? And really know that the day is set up to serve you. It's a brand new day, a brand new opportunity. Whatever the weather, you can make it something that serves you. You can let it serve you, right? And by just tossing out your intention. And then you'll start to see there's something called recency bias, but that's just science for something super spiritual, that you can see the reflected back to you what you launched out into the universe, this intention. You said, I want this to happen because it would make my day worth it. It would make living today really juicy and memorable and rewarding for just grinding day in and day out, doing X, Y, and Z. It will make the day feel worth it and special and warm and exciting, not just the rote routine. So answer that question. Picture it in your mind's eye. What would have to happen? How would it look? It could be something super simple, like my kids come home with a smile on their face and nothing bad happened. They didn't get a scratch. They didn't scratch their knee, that kind of thing. Okay. And then how can you do whatever it takes to make that happen without controlling anything, without controlling anyone? How can you do your best to make that happen? And if you can't control the situation, you can't, maybe it's you being okay with it. I'm okay with whatever happens. Or I will call the school and tell them to, about this, to help my kid, whatever. But that's a little bit controlling. So as much as you can, what can you do to make it happen, even if it's to release your control over it, your control that it has to look a certain way. So what has to happen to make today worth it? And if it is releasing, which, there's always an underlying decluttering aspect to everything we do. I read this thing on Facebook the other day, James Altucher's quote about, I don't know, if you do something you don't want to do, you'll end up resenting it and resenting everybody around you. I could probably pull it up and find it maybe. But basically, if you do something you don't want to do and you go into it knowing I don't want to do this, then you're going to find some way to blame something else for why you had to do it. And so we end up resenting the process, resenting the person, resenting the idea, resenting ourselves for doing it, for caving, giving in, whatever it is. And that's there's some decluttering there, right? Everything there is kind of this insight that involves the removing of fear, the reducing of stress, the clearing away of clutter. And there's always some flip side of anything where you can make that happen. That's why people always say it could be better, or there's always room for improvement. It's a big one. There's always room for improvement. And that's because there is depth to life. There's something deeper happening, right? And before I get too on a tangent here, because I do want to get back to the questions, and forget what I'm saying, I need to wrap it up. But think about what needs to happen. How can you do your best to make it happen without controlling the situation? And sometimes the answer to that question is you releasing control. Okay. So, and I feel like I do ramble on these. So I'm just going to call myself out. I do ramble a little bit on these. And so I just want to thank you for being with me, sticking with me through these random thoughts and these random questions that come in from all over the place. I've answered questions. I mean, geez, billions of questions, but haven't we all? But in this format, right, these kind of clarity sessions, I've answered thousands of calls like this, one-to-one, in public, whatever, in live events. And so this is fun for me. I love it. I hope you do. My ultimate takeaway for you is that you walk away with some insight, some download that changes your perspective, maybe changes your path to something a little bit more clear and exciting and blissful. Basically, you get to download something that gets you unstuck and on your purpose-driven path. I love to say, follow your bliss, on your blissful path. I love that quote. That's probably my favorite quote. Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss. It's my favorite quote. And I mean, is The Power of Myth my favorite book? Power of Now is my favorite book, actually. It's the book that changed my life forever. Ooh. Okay, hold on. Let's talk about this real fast. The books that changed my life the most are probably The Power of Now, that changed my kind of perspective on life. It kind of it resonated so much with me that it confirmed some of the things I had believed. And so it changed me having to think any other way than what really resonates and feels truth for me. And so Power of Now, David R. Hawkins, Transcending the Levels of Consciousness, the first book I read, really on this on this subject of presence and peace, and really where my work comes from. And that's an amazing book. It's heady. It feels scientific, but he has a PhD, so I guess in a way it could be. But anyway, Transcending the Levels of Consciousness, and then The Power of Myth. The Power of Myth is a great book. But anyway, follow your bliss. I love that quote. And this is me following my bliss. So thank you for coming along with me as we answer these questions. And let's do it. So Laurel's question, how do I manage my anxiety? It gets so bad I can't. I have to leave the room. I can't even move if I'm stuck in a bad place. She goes on to kind of tell me a little bit of things that are more personal than we need to go into, but I'll factor that into how I'm answering the question. And so I just want to say, Laurel, I see you. I'm sorry. I'm sad that you have such anxiety. And I think anxiety, I don't know if it's just because of who I'm working with and my own journey through anxiety. I mean, because I've been there, like severe panic attacks. One in particular led to a blackout. That is, now I have my practices where if I feel one coming on, because I think I'm prone to it, to having anxiety, that I've got to put in place boundaries and systems and structure that alleviate some of the causes of my anxiety. Okay. And that it boils down to me. So I've been here, I've done this work. It's honestly the origin story of the Declutter Code, my book, The Declutter Code, 10 Simple Steps to Clarity. And even since me as a mom, right? I've even adjusted those 10 steps for like how I'm a mom. I've made them fit into my life as a mom. They still absolutely are work for anybody, but they specifically help me in certain ways as a mom, that I've kind of seen. Oh, okay, I see that. And this is how it's looking now. This is how that step looks now for me as a mom. Okay. But I think my next book is going to be on parenting, because what what this brought up for me was, yes, I hear a lot of people discuss their anxiety, and they have severe anxiety. So this is a timely topic, I think. Having anxiety, severe panic attacks, I mean, however it looks for you, having to leave the room, have just kind of being stuck, not knowing what to do, getting flustered, maybe turning red, like however this anxiety, heart beating really fast, all those things is your body telling you you have anxiety. Sure, absolutely. And there's also kind of this mental manifestation of anxiety. There, I think it's first born mentally, and then because anxiety just is what it is, right? The body's kind of in our flesh and bones are very much concerned with survival. Our mind is concerned with survival, but in like an emotional, mental, even physiological way, the way the mind connects with the body. And so anxiety is showing up for all these different people. And sometimes it's not anxiety. Sometimes it's something else, stress. And we're calling it anxiety. Anyway, let me not go too far down that path, because that is something to talk about for sure. Just why so many people have anxiety. And I think it brought me to parenting, my parenting journey. So this is all coming back to what I was going to say. What this question made me think of, and immediately was, we were taught to stress. We learned to stress. A lot of times because of, the example we saw in our families, the way that our parents reacted to things. And if there was a lot of screaming and yelling around chores, then chores kind of are very stressful. They interrupt things. They don't fit into a schedule nicely. Nobody wants to clean a toilet, right? No, right? So see how it's like our own interpretation of the inconvenience, coupled with how, when it didn't get done, it caused a lot of drama. So there's a lot of layers there to unpack how we were taught to stress. But basically, it comes back to reactive parenting. So if you were around, I even threw some examples out there. So chores, yeah. Did your parents complain about bills, right? Not having enough money. So there's stress around money, not being able to afford things. And so if we weren't taught the example of how not to react to the uncomfortable things in life, the inconvenient things in life, not react, then we don't know how to not react. We are reacting. And so to break that cycle of parenting for your kids, because ultimately, when you're at this crux in the road, you've got your experience and the experience you want to give to your family, then you're met with kind of the decision, okay, well, I can break the cycle. I can recognize where I'm reactive, and we're not going to see all of it. We're not going to see all of it. There's a lot there that we just can't get to, right? If you're outnumbered as a single person and you've got more than one kid, then even, you're always going to feel like, oh, I can't keep up. But all that to say, we can break the cycle of reactive parenting by choosing to respond in the moment a little bit differently than maybe we experienced in our own upbringing. So if you asked for a new bike and money was tight, and bills were being kind of like thrown as as the reason why, or can't afford it and we're broke and that kind of thing, then you stand to kind of have the same reaction because you have the same association. So you're carrying that has been imprinted on you like some as if this is how you have to react from now on, right? Like, so when this happens, this is how you react. But let's imagine if we're going to break the cycle of anxiety or stress or whatever, teaching that reactive nature, because anxiety is a reaction to feeling out of control, feeling like, oh, I can't keep up, or what else does it feel like? Fear, our nerves just getting rattled, and we can't settle. It's not just like a boo in a scary movie. Like, it's that feeling of being rattled and jumping out of your seat, but ongoing. And so we don't know, how do we react to that? How do we respond to that? We learned one or the other, one of those two ways. And so if you can break the cycle, and this will help with your anxiety, how do you manage your anxiety? To get back to the question, this is a great opportunity as a parent to learn to manage your anxiety, because you've got somebody, some impressionable mind, looking at you on how to come to manage anxiety. So if the anxiety makes you, okay, the first thing I can do is leave the room. Well, maybe can you breathe through it and say, hold on to the person you're talking to, or put your head down on the desk, whatever, and take a deep breath. Close your eyes so somebody knows that you're working through something. And to maybe you'll find the right cue for that person. With everyone, it might be different, for that person to let them know, whoa, hold on. I just got overloaded. In my own mind, was it you? Was it me? I don't know. It's not about that. Give me a second. So whatever you decide how you decide to respond to what your triggers are, because it's not about the trigger. It's about how you react. Okay. It's not about the trigger. Triggers are innocent in all this. It's not about the trigger. But what the trigger is telling you is, oh, wow, you like to react to this. And the trigger is going to be it's not just a person, it's a behavior, it's a place, it's a memory, it's a smell. I mean, right? These triggers happen. It's an environment. It's a belief, ultimately, about something that causes you to react in a certain way. So we want to be the example for our kids to slow our reaction. And so if they imagine you're getting worked up in front of these babes, and you get to show, like, okay, hold on. And you're walking yourself through it, and they get to be the bystander hearing you walk yourself through it, so that they can be like, oh, wow, I'm a little more self-aware myself. As they learn to process and approach complicated thoughts and emotions, they can start to walk themselves through it, and maybe even start to talk to you about it. And you can walk together through it without telling them how they should feel. And that's a lot of patience required, that in order to be that present and available as a parent. It's a lot of patience. It's a lot of time. And so that's why, if you only got that hour with your kids, maybe use that time to be that present. If you know that you can, you're sending the kids off to school, well, then that morning, that chunk of time in the morning before they're off to school, you get to be present. If you need more breaks because that time sucks a lot out of you, because for whatever reason you're tired, you didn't sleep last night, then you need to build in some breaks. And that is because we need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of ourselves first. We need space. We need distance from the trigger. We need distance from the problem that we see until we're over the problem, until we're calm, clear, collected, enough to see the problem is within our vast knowledge to solve, and that it's not a problem at all. It's actually an opportunity for whatever, for breaking this cycle, for not being so triggered, for not letting anxiety get the best of you. And so we've got these opportunities, especially when somebody's watching us, to respond instead of react. And it's not going to feel easy all the time. It's an easy concept. It's not going to feel easy all the time to slow down in that moment enough to not react, to pause long enough to not react. And imagine what your kids can see. Imagine what you would have seen if you didn't have this eruption of emotion when something bad happened in your household. I say that with a grain of salt because I'm sure people will have tons of scenarios for me, and I will gladly walk through them all if you send them. But I say it with a grain of salt because no, I don't. I know my upbringing. I know the life I'm trying to give my kids. I know my own baggage, and I don't know what I don't know. So all of that combined means that you could present something to me, and you'll have to take some time to think about it. But this is what I wanted to leave you with, that kind of idea, and how you can, if you've got kids, work on your anxiety by recognizing what it's calling you to do, react or respond. And then even if you don't have somebody watching, recognize anxiety as a means to move through fear. Learn to pause, be with, whoa, what's erupting here? What wants to just boil up? And what do we need to do with something hot boiling off the stove? We need to let it cool down. And do we stick our hand in the water when it's boiling? No, we let it cool down, or we will burn ourselves. And a lot of times we want people to burn themselves. We want people to stick their hands in our burning water, or they just don't know how to stop themselves, because if they recognize patterns, if they've known you long enough, and if they live with you, especially, they should know kind of your patterns and maybe how to help you work through some of that anxiety and how it shows up. But some people just want to poke the bear. They want to put their hand in the fire, and sometimes we want them to poke the bear. We want them to put their hand in the fire because we want to react. We need a release of this, and what we know, the release that could feel the best is if I erupt too. If they're erupting at me and I erupt at them, and that's just the way it goes, and we're two battling people and fighting and calling names, and maybe that's the most accessible reaction for us because we haven't paused to learn to respond differently, to react differently, to learn a new way to react, because reactions are the easiest thing, the most accessible thing, because they are top of mind. They're what we did last. They're what gave us some relief, result. And it's not, just like kids crave attention, even if it's bad, same thing for us, right? It's kind of, it shows up like that. Okay, so a little bit more, a couple other things I jotted down here for this question is, to manage anxiety, it does require us to learn to respond. So pause, be present in the moment, because when you are present with your triggers, just go back to that word. When you're present with your triggers, then you can recognize how it all boils down to how you're fighting this battle in yourself. Okay, so nobody else is really doing anything to us. We are causing it all. And um, when we pause, if we're feeling anxiety, and I think anxiety is a great teacher, it's a great teacher to learn where the battle lives and how to own the battle, own your side of it, right? It's kind of like these dueling sides, the part of you that wants to change and the part of you that wants to stay stuck because it feels safe. It continues to do the things that feel safe because they're just familiar. It doesn't mean that you are secure. It just means that you're safe inside this identity, this shell of an identity that you've erected. And that is where you want to stay. Because how do I even start to respond? Start to pause. Well, you just pause. And that is the first step to slow down, pause, right? Slow down, take a breath, separate yourself from what you think is the problem and recognize the thoughts in between the action and the reaction. So that's why we're pausing. But to actually go back to something I said earlier about I'm learning to lessen the complications in my life, I recognize too that if I don't identify so much as in a certain way, or I'm learning to take myself a lot less seriously, especially going live like this, where it's like anything could happen and stuff does, and it's embarrassing maybe. And maybe I don't want to look back at my old videos, whatever it is, right? And or starting this video, I'm like, okay, well, what kind of questions are going to come in today? And, that kind of thing, all the uncertainty. Well, as I'm getting older, by lessening the complications, I'm also lessening my attachment to an identity that needs defending. And so notice how a lot of our reactions are in defense of who we think we are. We're defending this identity that we don't want bashed. We don't want ruined because we built our whole lives becoming this person. But even in that, even in becoming this new version of you, there's no need to hold so fast to an identity that needs defending. Because we cage ourselves. We build more. We can either declutter in this life or we can just hoard more and more things that we attach to ourselves, like stickers that make us look how we want to look and come across how we want to come across. And that's in a way a cage. It's a prison of our own making. And that's why they say rehabilitation really does start in the mind, and you can be rehabilitated from something if you pause to think about what are the stories you're telling yourself about that, and what's causing you to believe those things. You might not get down to the exact thing when you were 8 years old, this happened and that might be your first memory of it, but ultimately what matters are your thoughts around that thing. And you can start to peel back your thoughts about a thing, and it's like an onion. There's a lot of layers. So what you might think initially is something that's keeping you reacting, there's usually like a flip side to that. And think of a prism, all these different sides. It's so multifaceted, this thought, this belief that you continue to believe, this thought you continue to think. It's so thick with experience that you've got in many different categories of life. You've got examples of how if I react this way when I think this thought, it serves me or it doesn't. And so we kind of hit our heads on certain parts of life. Maybe I got parenting down, I got my eating down, but I don't have my finances down, right? So it's like I pray really, I feel like my prayer life is really great, but I don't um, I'm still renting and I don't own a house, but I'm praying and I feel like I'm praying for a house. So it's like, so we're kind of like doing these things, but ultimately what is the truth we believe? And that's, I'm not even going to go into money mindset. Whew, that's a big one. but see how there's different categories of life: relationship, health, wealth, spirituality. Those are the four that came up when I gave my examples. But basically, we've got kind of examples of what this thought results in and how we might react to this thought in each of those categories. And so let's imagine if you are parenting a child, you're an anxious person. How do I manage my anxiety? You're an anxious person and you've got your kids around you, and you're trying to help manage your anxiety better. Well, it's hard. It's going to feel hard in the moment to do this, but once you practice, right, when you're not anxious and you're asking the question when you're not anxious, you're getting the feedback when you're not anxious, which means you can start to tweak some things now in a very calm, clear state, so that the next time you go and you have an anxiety attack, then it's feeling like, okay, I got a tool and I can pause. At least I got that. I can breathe 3 big breaths in and out. I can fold over and touch my toes, let blood come to my brain. I can pause the person talking to me because what they're saying is really rallying me up and it's too much. It's too much gossip for my sensitive energy right now. And I don't want to gossip anymore. And so you're bringing this all up and I want to say something, but my point of today is not to gossip. And if I could just not gossip today, it will have been worth it. And, all these things to tie it back in, all these things are coming in, right? It's like a rush. All of that happens. It's a rush. And so that's why we react versus calm the waters, calm the storm, give yourself experience and vision to see through you responding in a different way. And okay, so what else did I write here? I think that's good because we're coming on getting close to our time. But I do want to make sure I'm answering this question. I always feel like I have so much to say about something that it's long-winded, but did I answer the question? Did I answer the question? How do I manage my anxiety? I think I did. I think I did answer that question. When you're calm and clear, recognize, especially, in hindsight of something that, whoa, I lost it. I was spiraling and I lost it. I hit a mental block. I hit a wall and I couldn't really go past it. And so I just did what I always do. I yelled and screamed. I left the room. I quit a job. I screamed at my kids. I ran away, whatever, right? So I see that I did that, and that's my typical reaction to something like that. And it seems to be happening. It's a cycle. I'd like to break that cycle. How can I do differently next time? And I'm not even going to say do better. That's my biggest pet peeve of a statement, do better. Biggest pet peeve. That is a trigger for me. Do better. So opinionated and elitist. It's just like, how can I do different next time? Because I know I'm going to face this again. I'm going to face this teacher. I'm going to face this partner. I'm going to face this child expressing him or herself in that way again. How can I do differently next time? And so this is what I can do. I can breathe and I can say, hold on, mommy needs quiet time. I'm going to go into I can explain why I'm leaving. I could, and then just leave and plug my ears so I don't hear anything else from this person. I could close my eyes, take a big deep breath. I could jump up and down and get my energy back in my body because everything just drained out of me. Whatever it is, right? I could do something. I can try this next time. And that way I can grab that tool the next time I feel anxious. I can grab that tool that I prepared myself with so that I can do differently next time. Welcome to the Clarity Hotline. I see everyone coming in. And so we've got another pre-submitted question. Carl, how do I know if I'm living my purpose? I think this is a great question. Immediately when I read it, I thought, well, do you feel like you're living your purpose? Do you feel like you're living your purpose? Does it feel spot on? Does it feel the path that you're on right now? Does it feel purposeful? And I don't mean that condescendingly. I mean that very honestly. Does it feel like you're on a path that feels peaceful and purposeful and rich with experiences you want to take on? Because ultimately, when you're walking your purpose, it's not a job, it's a focus. It's not a task, it's a behavior. And so if we're living our purpose, we're going to behave a certain way. It's more of how you be in a situation, how you are being in a situation, not what you're doing. Because your purpose underlies everything you do. It's a given. Your purpose also anchors thought back to vision and clarity and drive. Drive can be used in two different ways, though, toward purpose or toward distractions. So that's a little bit tricky, and I want to leave that with you just so that you recognize the next time you're really fired up on something, is this my purpose? I'm really fired up about this. And I see this with a lot of my multi-passionate clients. I'm really fired up about this. How, and I want to do it. And so they just get kind of ravenous with ideas. Ideas come a dime a dozen, especially for the creative person. And we're all creators here. And it's like, oh, I want to tackle all these ideas versus, well, this is my focus right now. And this is what I'm doing to execute things right now. And it's on purpose. And I'm feeling enriched by it. So I'm going to keep going here. And then I'm going to table this other idea for later, because that does still feel on purpose, but it doesn't feel on time. It doesn't feel like it's right now. And so we do kind of constantly have to align ourselves with purpose, like vision and action, kind of what we do on a daily basis. Ultimately, we want it to serve our vision. That's the point, right? So, because why do it? Why do something if it's not serving your purpose and your ultimate goal in life? Why not go in the direction of your dreams? I know I say that, and maybe it's a little bit jokingly, but why not? There's so many complications that we put in the way of us just following our dreams. Distractions get in the way, doubt gets in the way. And we're, before you know it, giving up on those things. And I think people are really confused about clarity. They think, oh, you don't need clarity to start. I've seen it so many times. People say, oh, you don't need clarity to start. But what they're not seeing is that you actually have clarity in order to start. You do need clarity in order to start something. You needed clarity to have the vision, to have the foresight of seeing that this thing could result in this, and that is desirable. And it's a split second of a clear moment. It's a split second of clarity, a flash before your eyes. Maybe it's habitual patterned behavior, but it's still clarity that this got me that result and I want kind of that result again. And so maybe that's why we keep eating bad food. Or, we're drawn to sugar, sex, substances, social media. I mean, what's another S? Like we we're drawn to those things because they gave us relief at one point, and we want that relief again. We want that same high that we had when we did it last time. And so we just kind of chase these the instead of chasing, well, instead of chasing the next bit of clarity about ourselves, we're just now using the drug of choice. And that's kind of hiding that's just numbing our truth. We're silencing the insight that wants to come in by going that same route. And I think this could kind of go to that if you're kind of trying to break a habit. There is kind of the same thing with anxiety. Managing your anxiety is that we pause, we recognize, maybe we try to come up with something we can do differently next time that might feel good. I know breathing feels good. We know that, right? Big breath in, big breath out. I know that feels good. So let's try that. And then all I have to do is get to that breath, get to the end of that breath, that exhale, and then I can make a new decision. And so that feels more accessible than like, oh, I've got to uproot my whole life in order to, I don't know, something big, move to a different state. That's a big job. But, obviously, you don't just move to a different state. You break it down and you think, okay, well, I probably should declutter my belongings before I pack up something that I have to pay to move. So I'm going to declutter. I'm going to make sure I have a house to move into over there at that new place or in the new state. I need to maybe line up work, whatever it is, right? Whatever is the reason you're moving. So it's like all those things come before the actual move. So we see how we have things lining up. And that's why something feels so big. It's like, well, that feels big because it is a big ask, but break it down into smaller steps. So that way you're not so overwhelmed, because what you're overwhelmed by is the thought of all the steps. It's like, I don't know what I don't know. I'm going to come up against a roadblock or some major disaster, and I don't know how I'll recover from it. All these things are kind of coming into your mind when you think about making the move. It's like, but hold on, take a breath, brain dump, write it all down. Before I move, I got to do this, this, and that, and that. And it always feels good to have it somewhere. Have it somewhere. Empty your brain of all those ruminating thoughts so that especially if other people are involved, everyone can kind of see this list that this all has to get done, and we'll probably talk about it at some point, but at least I brain dumped my ideas. And then same for you, really anything that you're doing, you just want to ultimately ask the question, does this feel on purpose? Am I feeling fulfilled by this action? I can take this action and it feels good to take the action. I believe that is very much part of the process of sticking. It's like one thing to know your purpose. And I know my purpose. There's a little process I like to teach people, finding your purpose statement. And you'd be surprised. People think it's like, oh, my purpose is to help people learn to read. I want to help literacy. But there's so much deeper, there's so much depth to even that. Why do you want to help people learn to read? Because that could be charity, that could be teaching, see how all of it doesn't because it can splinter to so many different directions. Okay, I feel like I'm saying it too in too many tangents. So let's get back to the question. This is kind of like what it is to stay on purpose. You have to catch yourself when you're starting to stray towards something that doesn't feel on purpose. And we do a lot of things on a daily basis that aren't really purpose driven. Maybe they're comfort or whatever, and enter our drug of choice in there, right? It's like the way I caught myself wanting to give too much to this answer is how I rein myself back into the question. Same thing for purpose. And going back to that clarity, thinking you don't need clarity. You do need clarity to start something. And the clarity is what grounds you back to purpose, your vision, your reason for living, your work in the world. And by your work in the world, what you're called to clear in yourself, the blockages, the karmic patterns, the beliefs that hold you back from living your fullest, most enjoyable life. Because that's what you want. You want to be faced with the experiences that awaken you. And we're choosing to walk down this path that we're on right now, to be faced with these experiences that will change us, that will grow us, evolve us, enlighten us. And so before we do anything, there's always some tie back to whatever we're clearest on. And so we're only as weak as we are confused, right? So if we spend time to get our clarity, then we can continue to walk the path of purpose. It's one thing to know your purpose. It's one thing to walk the path of purpose, and to keep reining yourself back to vision, to meaning, to feeling fulfilled in this lifetime. I think ultimately, yeah, we want to feel fulfilled in this lifetime. And that's what I know I want for my kids. I want them to ultimately feel fulfilled, right, in this lifetime. So I think that's a wrap. So thanks for coming on and, staying with me and asking these questions however you're submitting them. And let's have a good rest of the week. And if I think of anything, I'll include it in the description. If I think of anything else, I'll include it in the description. But yeah, just thank you. Thanks for being with me. Thanks for tuning into these replays. If you are, thanks for tuning in live. Thank you guys. And then, yeah, feel free to pick my brain, even though it might go all over the place. All right. Peace. All right. We're off with Instagram. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else that I want to say? Except thanks for tuning in and being on here. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Thursdays, noon Pacific, Clarity Hotline.